All right.
Am I talking or you?
It's all you.
Oh, it's news to me.
I'm talking later. I'll let you talk.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our meeting. We have one quick update from Chris about disc golf, that a meeting took place recently, and he was part of that. He has an update for us, and then after that, we'll get into hearing what you guys have to present about updates from your sections. And we have some feedback as staff from what we received so far, and then we'll go from there. So I'll kick it over to Chris, let him talk for a minute, and then come back to our next topic.
So I received an email a couple of months, or maybe a month and a half ago, from the Rochester Disc Golf Association, RDGA. They sent a note and just were asking about what the property was going to look like and if there was going to be any potential opportunities for disc golf. So kind of put them on hold until this committee kind of worked through some of the steps, but I didn't want to put them on hold too long. So we actually met last week, myself and Tim Masterton, who is our parks foreman, met with the group just to find out what they were looking for. So really what they're hopeful that they would be able to do, especially for the first year, is do what they call pop-up events, where they come into basically a park or a piece of property. They set up their tournament, or they set up their 18 holes. They run their tournament in one day. They collapse everything, and boop, they're out. So it's kind of a good opportunity for us to be able to use the property for what I'll say is a different form of recreational opportunity, something we haven't done in the community before. Gives exposure to the property to not only obviously disc golf people, but also people from outside the community that may be coming in, as well as people who don't have a familiarity with what disc golf might be. They would have an opportunity in Penfield to see what is considered a tournament. So really, nothing formal was agreed upon, other than I said I would share it back with this group, just that we did meet. The group is very interested in doing it. There are a few issues that they do have going into setting up some sort of a pop-up tournament. The main one obviously being what the property looks like from a maintenance standpoint. For those of you that have ever seen or participated in disc golf, it does not need to be manicured. However, it can't be what I'll say wild growth, where the grass or the weeds or the saplings are growing up to where they're 2 feet high, because then the players do lose their discs, similar to how people lose a golf ball on a golf course. So there are some maintenance concerns that they have. If they were to do a pop-up tournament, it would have to be what I would say very early in the spring, before the grass or before the weeds have a chance to really take hold and get the full growth. So you're looking at something, again, potentially the end of April, first part of May. And again, a lot of it would be just weather dependent, whether or not they could do it. They're focusing mainly on the front nine area, as disc golf doesn't typically use a full size of a normal golf course would. So they could do their full 18 holes on the front nine. Maximum size of their tournament's around 72 players, with additional support staff and those kind of people. You're looking at 100 to 125 people. The property would not be closed, so if somebody showed up and wanted to go for a walk, they're more than welcome to still be able to do it. They would situate themselves so that as people enter the property, they would see sort of what I'll call a welcome tent or a registration tent. So if they had questions about what was going on, they could at least pick up some information and kind of see, and again, sort of further the cause from a disc golf association.
So they're not looking for any kind of maintenance responsibilities from the town?
Nope. Again, obviously, if it goes that way, from a long-term standpoint, it would benefit them to either look at potentially putting in a couple of holes permanently if we wanted to go that route. But unless there is that maintained type of property, they wouldn't be able to do it. So that's why this pop-up tournament works well. They just basically come in, set their stuff up, run their tournament on Saturday from 7 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night, fold everything up and they're gone. So Sunday morning.
You don't have bathrooms.
Don't have bathrooms. We talked about that. They would be responsible for bringing in something like a porta-john trailer or something along that line. But again, same thing that this group has talked about all along, that whatever is going on there, if it's a group that's coming in there and they're gonna bring in 70 to 100 people, from a responsibility standpoint, it would fall on them.
Now, Ellison has the disc golf course, yeah.
Yep, there's a couple in the area. There's one in Allison, there's one in
Anybody
Webster.
wants an idea of it.
Yep.
I was just saying, I've never seen it,
Cool.
and I wonder if it'd be possible for Doug to go on YouTube and project it. Is that possible?
What is the parking capacity right now in the parking lot? Do you guys know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
I did know, and I apologize for that. Actually, I do know.
It's in the RFP,
No, I
isn't
will
it?
tell you, it's in the RFP.
For 150 spaces, I think.
There you go.
When
And
we
by the
were,
way, he's already signed you up for a tournament.
when we were talking, that question did come up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But more or less what we talked about is typical golf tournament at Shadow Pines would be full golf tournament's 144 golfers, so even if you cut that in half, you're around 70 cars, 70 to 80 cars. Obviously, the difference there is they did have some spillage before that now we have the mulch pile in. But I think from a parking standpoint, you'd be all right.
So at Ellison, they have the permanent discs.
Yep, that's a temporary, that's the
180.
pop-up.
180 cars?
I win.
And I know they used to use that one field to the north of it for overflow parking when they had, large tournaments.
It's similar to golf. They obviously are looking for a natural setting, they want trees, they want water, they want all that. It's just the fact of, as you saw in that picture, they do have to have some sort of doesn't need to be, I'll use the word manicured, but it does have to have some sort of maintained property.
If I recall from walking the property in the fall, the grass may be 1.5 feet tall, but it's all like folded over.
And that was what Tim was talking about, and again, I don't want to speak for Tim, but some of the things that are going to happen is between the fall and now, some of the fairways where those areas in the grass has grown over, now there's starting to be, some of the saplings that are coming up that in the fall were, the size of your pinky, now are, the size of
They grew.
this big. So over the course of the next year, you're going to that's going to become a bigger issue. So
Jim, did you say 180 or 190?
180.
Yeah.
And that's both lots, the, like the
Clark.
Clark House and then the...
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Now, is there any income from this? Or they just use it and take care of?
typically, we do have park fees just
Okay.
based on what type of an event it is. If it's
Just curious.
typically on something like this, I'm trying to relate it to one of our other groups. A lot of the groups that we work with are not for profit, so theirs is a little different.
Where do you envision overflow parking happening if that does get overflowed on a day like that?
At one time, they could have used the lawn area, but that's not lawn area.
Correct, I would say
anymore, so
there's
I'm not
mulch
certain
pile in it.
We're looking for an overflow parking at this point in time.
Well, I mean, I think it's just going
And-
to kind of happen organically, right? Like people are going to show up, the parking lot will be full.
Right, and as you
they're gonna start
remember, we
parking
cannot
along the
add
street.
onto the pavement of that area there because of that 200-foot buffer area. They cannot be paved. If anything, it would have to go further into the property to the west. All that has to kind of stay the way it is now.
I don't know if
I guess I'm talking about like day of.
Yeah, day of.
Like, you know,
You're chilling it.
are we just going to let people park along the road there?
Absolutely
I
not.
don't think you'd want
No.
that.
That would be the
So you
worst
would
condition
actively
possible.
block that off, like with posts or something like that?
Yeah, really.
Again,
Good call.
that would truthfully, it would be up to the group. They'd almost have to limit it. If
Right.
you could almost set a limit as to, you're allowed to have, I think I wrote, there were 72 is the max participation. So,
Okay.
you could even tell them for their first go around, they could have half of that. They could have 36, so you could limit the
Well,
number.
that's not a bad
But again,
idea.
if you're looking at from, what did you say, 180 parking spots? That's a lot of parking spots. You take a place like Greenwood that's got enough cars for about 40 cars, if that.
The golf course
And it-
had a couple of really big tournaments there, and they never parked on the road. They did park
Right.
across Clark, over by the barn. They put some cars out there.
So you think a full golf tournament's 144 golfers, and if you don't generally end up on the road, a tournament that is a max of 72, that's half of that. So more or less, you're probably never going to have an issue from a parking standpoint.
that'd be good.
And you're gonna have more than one person coming in at the end.
Absolutely. probably most of the cars, especially from people I would say
Just
out of
tell them,
town.
you know, we encourage cars, we're limited in parking, we encourage carpooling.
Yeah.
The optimistic part of me too says that there will be 30 or 40 cars there for people just using the property on a nice Saturday or something
Yeah.
like that too.
Could very well be.
So,
Any other questions for Chris? Maybe?
No, but I have
Maybe.
a quick update also that, and then most of you probably know, the Penfield Trails Committee ran a hike on the back nine on Saturday, had over 60 people for the walkthrough, and a lot of good comments about the property and a lot of looking forward to the hiking and things going on there, so.
Was it, Terry, was it safe on the paths that you took them on? Were there any obstructions or anything because of the storm?
No, there were nothing, no obstructions on the path that we took. We took basically the asphalt path, but it was all snow covered, so you didn't really know exactly where the path was.
Yeah.
But it was, there was no obstructions, and everybody, I think, did fine, and we had a couple of people in the back to escort anybody back that, overestimated their capability.
Yeah.
So, but it worked out very well.
How was it going back up the hill?
Slippery?
It was slippery?
I warned them that there was a quadricep test, in the back, about halfway through, and but we came up over that, and then we just kind of let them free range across the rest of it
Yeah.
to get back to the barn.
Yeah. Oh,
But it
good.
worked out very well.
Great. Anybody else have anything they want to share before we get into it?
just one other thing I heard at the hike that I really liked. There was a woman there, and unfortunately I forget her name, but she was talking about wanting to do a maple tapping program through Parks and Rec, and she was talking about either looking for a maple grove that already exists on the property or potentially planting one. And I thought that was a really cool idea.
Very good. Yeah, we'll jump in.
So, at this point, we'll leave it up to you guys who wants to go first of the groups that are here tonight. But we have an opportunity to go over what you guys have been working on in your groups, so you can share those thoughts and ideas as it relates to the report and your sections for that. I think I received 4 drafts today and yesterday from the 8 groups. So for those people that did present something and send it in, if you want to take this chance to talk about it or ask us any questions that you may have, we can do that. I think if we go in the order, I think we had Eric sent me something for group 1, Bob, you sent something from group 3, and then we had groups 5 and 6 as well. So I'll leave it up to you guys how you want to start. If you want to start at the top and work your way down, we can do that.
Sure.
I'll leave it up to you.
Go for it.
So group 1, Eric, we'll pull up a copy on the screen as well for everyone to look at it. I just copy and paste it out of the Google Doc to get it into here to make it
Okay.
easier. But I'll hand the reins over to you.
Okay. So we tried to kind of keep this as minimalistic as possible. I got to give a lot of credit to Terry. He was kind of our taskmaster, keeping us going. So even though I did a lot of the writing for this was really I felt like a great collaboration between the 3 of us. We did some on email and then got together on Saturday and then did a little bit more by email before Beth left town. So we started off with the multi-use paths, just splitting the front and back 9. Front 9 I think has a little bit different vibe and kind of intense. So we started off just talking about that, possibly creating a perimeter loop, and then talking about how some of the cart paths should be maintained for handicap use. They may even have to be expanded or improved for handicap use. The thought was around holes 1 and 2. There's a couple of paths that I think are either contiguous or could be with very little additional paving. And then the second bullet there is talking about more of the kind of the perimeter loop. And then on the back 9, our thoughts were that we'd start off by using the existing asphalt paths, but with the intent that we're going to add more of a natural surface trail system back there, and potentially just kind of allowing the asphalt cart paths to deteriorate naturally, so they become more of like a crushed stone path. And then I don't know how long that'll take, 5-10 years, but at that point we can maybe reassess what we would want the surface to be there and things like that. Snowshoeing was kind of a just free reign. People should be allowed to snowshoe wherever they want on the property. Cross-country skiing, just talk about that being on the front and back 9, with obviously the back 9 being a little bit more skilled area. And then I think the really important thing there is that whether we coordinate with the school or with Cross Country Ski Foundation, or if the town takes up the the grooming and things like that, is that we really want to make sure that that's wide enough to accommodate skiing, snowshoeing, people who are going to be walking on it, as well as fat biking on there too. And there's actually some nice trail signs that I found that I didn't include in this, but is kind of in my sandbox area below, that talk about how all of those users can share trails together. I found several examples of other trail systems around the country that had made up their own kind of custom signs talking about where to walk and ride and stuff like that, and where not to.
The intention being, once they're groomed, to have those tracks stay there and not have people interfere with them. And signs were very good, comprehensive in taking all those, all those people into consideration, different users and what they might do.
And also talking about when to use the trails and when not to use the trails. Like if you're walking or riding a fat bike and your tires or your shoes are sinking right through and making huge ruts or big potholes, you should wait till the snow is more compacted or not
You
as
mean
soft.
common
So-
sense? Whoa.
You'd be surprised at the lack of it these days.
Everybody's learning, you know.
Yeah, some people need a sign to help them out with common sense. So,
Question, Eric.
yeah.
Especially thinking about the winter sports, snowshoeing, cross country, if you only had one lodge, that was our bailiwick, was the lodges. If you only had one, or you had the first one, where would you like to see the front 9 or the back 9?
Probably the back 9. I mean, I think that's probably where more of the established trail system would be. I think that you have the opportunity to make trails of all difficulty levels on the back 9. There are certainly areas that you could make some fairly long loops of beginner trails even on the back 9. So that would be my thought, is just to have it there, because I think
We're
you're going to
thinking
have
of
a
a
greater diversity.
rustic type lodge, with a fireplace and, maybe an electric grill and
Yeah.
places
Something
warm.
like a Stewart Lodge at Many Ponds.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Stuart, I'm not familiar.
It's the one by the
Cavalry?
lake.
Cavalry Lodge is one
Yeah.
like that too.
Yeah, similar to that.
Yeah,
I think Stewart's a little bit bigger, but
but something,
same idea.
good basic, get in, it's warm, get out of the wind,
A lodge would be
get
great.
some chili.
I will say that as a cross-country skier in Rochester, New York, we're pretty used to not having lodges
Yeah.
or bathrooms or any kinds of facilities whatsoever. You go out there, you ski, you get back in your car,
Hardcore.
you go home.
Who needs a walk?
Glass.
But those kind of facilities are great, and it
Yeah.
will get more people out there, more people spending longer time out there if they can go out with a family.
You're
Spend
gonna
an
have
hour.
you're gonna have kids out
Yeah.
there too, yeah.
So, and then the funding was kind of general here. I think for a lot of this stuff, we're hoping that the town will establish a budget for doing this, but that could be supplemented by fundraising and volunteer work, and possibly kind of money coming from outside groups as well.
We added
Maybe
a
for
real
certain projects.
we had a note there about, some other factors could be considered that from the beginning of the report, I was kind of hitchhiking on a list Bob was starting to put together on one of his that talked about different ways of, different rules that we might be putting in place, or general rules that this group has talked about before. And, we were going to add some things there that might be other ways to fund things like memorial trees, memorial benches, and that kind of stuff to fund it. So that was what that reference is about the
Final report.
Yeah, the final report. Somewhere in the final report, we're going to hitchhike on that idea.
And then as far as implementation, we just talked about working with some of the other groups in town that have expertise, along with hopefully being able to use some of the DPW resources or Parks and Rec resources if there are any. We really try to keep a lot of these suggestions very high level and broad, because ultimately after this is made, the town is going to really focus on the details.
Yeah.
We kind of got into more of the weeds when we first started, and like every iteration of this, we've kind of been rolling it back and rolling it back. And, so I think it's better like this, because we had probably another
Jim-
page worth of stuff.
Jim and Chris, is this, the future of this more likely to end up in the hands, these decisions in the hands of the rec department?
Well, I think what'll happen, Bob, is that after your submission to the town board, they'll probably start looking at, what they can do in the short term versus the long term. And I suspect they're probably gonna have to bring somebody on board to do a master plan layout.
Especially with the buffer.
It's for somebody who has expertise like Eric. If you're gonna do pathways and that kind of thing for biking, they'll probably ask you to, kind of help that process and participating to see what's realistic and what's not.
I'm thinking along the lines of when you need a bathroom, when you need a pavilion for picnic tables.
Yeah.
When there's demand for it.
You're right.
We should build it.
Right. And the problem is, that those are expensive. I mean, bathrooms are really expensive. You wouldn't believe it, but the bathrooms that we have out here at the park and the ones...
Chris, I'm trying to get your budget increased.
You're talking about DPW's budget with bathrooms.
Line item? But yeah,
No, but
you're right.
pavilion and
We'll have to prioritize and
Another
support
lodge,
it.
yeah.
And who knows, maybe one of the existing buildings provide that service. We don't know yet. That might be one of the options as well, so who knows. But you're right, we'll have to look at it and see.
I don't see it as every
advising
decision as a town board decision to make, like,
Well, the funding
when to
aspect
put a
of it is the town
memorial
board.
bench out there, or where to, it just...
It's just gonna come down to what the plan calls for. You're gonna have short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. And if there comes to be a real deep need for new bathroom facilities, we're gonna have to look at that,
Right.
obviously.
I think those big projects obviously will be big decisions
Yeah,
at town
but-
board. But if things like you just said, Bob, a memorial bench, we get those on a regular basis for, people that call and, want to dedicate a bench, et cetera. We can work with those on a side scale versus being rolled into a master plan.
And it's amazing how many people are willing to spend money on benches, trees, bricks. I mean, we've had great responses over the years just for bricks, for different things that we put together.
Got a walkway at the Shepherd Home, and I noticed the pavilion, going up to the pavilion in the back here.
Yep.
We've got
Yeah, for
bricks,
veterans,
bunch
yeah,
of bricks.
absolutely.
I think, though, that there's a lot of people that are reacting about the trees, as I mentioned earlier. It's an opportunity to, put that out there, that this is something that people might
Oh, absolutely.
want
I
to...
guess it was
There
over.
will have to be a lot
Bricks.
of notoriety put in place for people to be able to do this.
Yeah.
But we will do that as the programs are starting to be developed.
Good.
Yeah, Jim, as I was going through this, it kind of dawned on me that even just looking at this from the standpoint of just the things that we want to implement from this group alone, that would take really kind of looking at this from a high level to make sure that, we don't just start putting in a trail here, but later on, we're going to want to have another trail be there, or put in a bench or something like that, right where maybe somebody's already planning.
Yeah, the whole
somebody
idea of
else is
master
planning to
plan
put
would be to
together.
minimize conflicts
Yeah.
wherever
They don't
possible.
interrupt,
Yeah.
Right.
So I was kind of curious if has the town identified somebody yet who might be kind of like the property manager for this, who might kind of oversee that
Right
process and
now,
decision-making?
probably the recreation department and the highway department.
So between parks and rec.
Okay.
But you know, there's gonna be things like scheduling, you know, if you have to use the park, somebody's gonna have to schedule that to make sure there's not a conflict with somebody else
Yeah.
using it. And certainly if somebody wants to just walk through it, they have the right to do that. You don't wanna put them in a position of any type of dangerous situation.
So again, a lot of it's just gonna be
Somebody needs a frisbee
determined.
in the back of the head, that's not gonna work well for any of us.
It's gonna depend on what those amenities are. So,
Alright.
I mean, obviously, you know, I go back to the RD, GA thing. The intent was that we wouldn't have an event that we close it off. It would still remain open to the public. So, you know, a lot of it's just gonna depend on what amenities or features are on that piece of property.
And that's
So the opportunities, this was more like the first statement there is more of just kind of a, hey, this is a really awesome thing, which I know we're kind of all talking about, but I guess I just wanted to point that out again. There's also opportunities here for working with service groups in the community, Eagle Scout projects, things like that. That fundraising line is, that's more of a note for us. We still need to kind of fill that out if there's anything else we want to add there. And then one of the constraints that we thought of was just the maintenance of the asphalt paths. That could be, could be kind of expensive, and again, kind of thinking about the idea of on the back nine at least, just kind of allowing the cart paths to deteriorate over time, so that the back nine is more of a kind of a natural surface area, if you will. And then the old stuff is all, that's just kind of our sandbox.
And
I like the deterioration part on the back nine. I think it's a real good idea.
the front, and the holes 1 and 2, as we mentioned in there, was, we don't know what the handicap trail specifications would need to be, so that would have to be explored and defined and
Yeah.
by someone beyond us, of course.
Well, certainly, I can understand what you're trying to accomplish with the degradation of the asphalt over a period of time. And that might be the appropriate thing to do. In terms of, you gotta think about handicap accessibility with wheelchairs. Stone dust appears to work fairly well. It does need maintenance on an ongoing basis, but it does work well. Things like mulch are not appropriate. You can't do well with mulch. So you're right, we'd have to get some expertise as to what was appropriate.
I imagine you at least have 5 years before those paths really become
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, they're still in really good
warped or
shape,
broken
actually.
that this should be pretty usable, so it might even be an opportunity during that time to come up with a plan to actually remove them and replace them before they just start crumbling away.
Well, I guess the question in my mind is, when they start to deteriorate, would that be problematic or would it be good?
It depends on how they deteriorate, I guess. If they just
Yeah,
start
but I
to
don't know.
crumble and
That's the
turn
point.
into
Yeah.
essentially crushed stone, I think it's not really going to be an issue if there's tons of frost heaving and things like that, and you end up with
Yeah.
big loose sections and things like that. It could be a different story, but
If it's big potholes or something, we might have a
Yeah.
problem. So it may be, that may say, change this part of the trail or something like that, and get rid of the asphalt.
Maybe we could try a phased replacement
Yeah.
right from the beginning.
That again could be part of the design that's established.
yeah.
The one thing about the trail on the back nine, the tests I talked about, the quadricep test, that's a pretty steep area.
It is.
As all of us that went on the hike may recall. Maybe a little bit difficult for bikers, people, kids running around on their bikes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that may need to be looked into to modify that, and that may be one of the earliest things
All right.
that would get changed so that it,
Take that path out.
maybe
Go
just
straight-
take
go
that
straight-
hillside out
go
and just
straight
come
down.
around the
Yeah.
hill or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little, it's pretty steep and pretty curved, and,
It's tough on a golf cart.
well, it's certainly gonna be tough on 12-year-old
I was
boys
thinking
coming
of sending
down there.
lacrosse teams and
Not ending
football
up in
teams
the
out there to
creek.
run that.
Start-
on Sunday. That's what I was thinking.
Probably will.
So anyway, that,
Yeah, we thought about including something about that, because that hill in particular is kind of a potential problem area, but we kind of figured that would be something that would end up just being more in the implementation of, different groups working with the town to actually implement it, rather than, we had a lot of ideas about what to do with it, and it would have added a couple more paragraphs to talk through all of those, so.
It might be worth it though.
Okay.
Because it might be a long-term issue that we have to deal with, and
Mhm.
it might be nice to have some recommendations about that.
So when we first started talking at the last meeting, we had a ton of ideas. We were getting really into the weeds. I wrote something that was a little less concise than this. We kind of pared it down to this, and we may have gotten to a point where maybe we contracted a little too much, and we can take some of that and add it back in. So that's why I kept this section below here. There's a whole bunch of just standalone paragraphs and sentences and things like that that we did have in there originally that could be added back in.
Actually, you might find them in some of the other recommendations, some of your standalones too.
Yeah.
Well, it may very well help us down the road trying to figure out how to solve some of these problems. So.
Well, before we move on to the next group, I just want to thank Eric and Terry and their group. This is exactly the format we were looking for and the language we were looking for as part of a section. I think for all the groups, this is a great example moving forward as we start getting into compiling the report and getting these sections all as part of one document. So just definitely take note of this and use it as a good example as you're going forward. The language is there, the content is there.
And the docs?
What?
Where's that available?
This is, I've made in the Google Drive folder, I made separate group folders for everyone. They're titled and each group member's on there, group 1, 2, 3, everyone's on it. You can go in and look at it and copy and paste. I also took all this stuff and made them PDFs. It's in this meetings folder as well. So you can go in there
Oh, okay.
and look at what we're looking at tonight. So there's multiple areas to look at.
Yeah. Where are they? Are they on the town site or?
No, on the Google Drive page. I can also send these out in an email to the group after tonight's meeting as well.
Oh, all right, that's Google, all right.
That's
Yeah.
probably a better
Yeah,
idea so
good
everyone
idea.
has them. Planning center.
We got like 27. Figuring out which one's the right one.
Planning
Doug
17.
1, Doug 2, Doug 3.
Whatever, I guess that.
Lower. All lower.
Zach, are you going to keep those folders the way that they are so we can continue to work
Yep.
on this document?
Exactly. I only added to them. I didn't take anything away.
Okay.
And I like the voice of that one. It's, I mean, again, this group is a recommendationary body to the town board, so they're the ultimate decision body, so we kind of got to keep that in mind. That these are suggestions from the committee. This is, recommendations coming out of this group, and ultimately the town board will take, bits and pieces, all of it or whatever. And we got to make sure we're kind of keeping that in that voice.
So yeah, just to follow up, if you go into the report, in the report folder, group documents, I have all the groups right here. A Google Doc has been made for everyone so they can edit their sections. And so tonight I took, there's a PDF of what Eric just went over. And then if you go back to today's meeting folder as well, a copy of it's there. So it's in multiple locations. And meeting agendas. So that's everything tonight that we received. Next group.
We're group 2. We are currently in the editing phase of it. Everybody's got it. We're looking at it. And we used Eric's, that group's format for ours, so I think we're close. We're just going through and kind of just making sure we all agree on what we're talking about. So I don't want to talk out of school. We're still waiting to get some, but
I think you did a great job.
we did a great job,
For about 10 days, you did a great job.
We did a great job. And really what our focus was that we are consistent with what the citizens of Penfield wanted. They wanted open space. We wanted, a lot of multiple. We look at it. We have multiple uses. If we have athletic fields, they can also be used in the winter for snowshoeing, for cross-country skiing. So a lot of our things, our recommendations point to not only do people want this or that, it also is consistent. It's consistent with the group before us that looked at this. So we're trying to, again, make recommendations to the town, understanding that they're going to say, theirs is the final. But I think we're on the right track. Again, I just don't want to talk out of school because we're just waiting for everybody's feedback. But I will send that out probably by the end of the week. But everything there is pretty much. We talk about everything but the disc golf, ironically enough.
Well, you got a great piece right
Right?
there.
I think it's done.
Take care of that for you.
Well, I'm just gonna say we approve of pop-up golf tournaments and leave it at that. But, again, a lot of these things are dependent upon athletic fields. They're dependent upon a lot of them are intermingled for what we're gonna do. And part of this too is evolutionary. This is gonna evolve over time. We're okay with any of these things going in, but it may not be immediately. It may not be within 5 years.
That's the right approach to take. Keep it high level, look at
Right.
the uses, don't get stuck in the weeds, you know?
Yep.
Right, because who knows, maybe disc golf is going to be the most popular sport in 5 years, and
I didn't believe pickleball ever would be.
I know, right?
Names like Drew.
Yeah, so I think we're close. And again, I think we'll have it out by the end of the week.
And so if we have
Everybody-
something out before the next meeting, then everybody
Yeah,
can
oh,
kind of look at
absolutely.
it and then
Absolutely.
come with a little bit of comment and feedback.
And I asked Chris for some feedback as well, because we're talking about fields.
Yeah.
What does he feel if we're talking about athletic fields, how many are we going to need from the community standpoint? I don't think 1 or 2, based upon our conversations that we've had, is going to do it. So, we make recommendations, but the town obviously has may have other ideas or completely agree.
Or may have other ideas 5 years from now or
Right.
5 years from now.
Well, and that's
20
part of it too, is we want to make sure that the community can grow
Right.
with the property.
Right.
Maybe we don't need X amount of fields right now, but at our growth, as sports become more popular or what have, maybe less popularity, we can change it. And, none of these things are really going to change the existing property all that much, to be honest with
Thanks for the update. Sure. Next.
Group 3.
That's such a clear.
Group 3, I also worked on Group 5. I'd like to start there if we could. Make it a little bit easier to explain the train of thought we were on.
Okay, his section 5.
Group 5 was the facilities that are not being recommended. And it was a little bit, maybe not intimidating, but a wake-up call when you said, had to figure out how to politely say no to people like the Penfield School District and the public library. So what I did was...
People say no to us all the time. It makes you feel any better. I'll get a whole night of it on Thursday.
I felt it was really easy because we've got the ready-made answer. It's called our comprehensive plan, which views not only Shadow Pines, but the 3 major land tracts there, the quarry and Shadow Lake, as future use is envisioned as either recreational or sanctuary use. So the comprehensive plan is pretty fundamental to everything you guys do in the town, and the town board does too. I don't think you could have called the moratorium to stop that development without having the backup of the comprehensive plan. So I think it ought to become a central part of our report. And I used it here in Group 5 as a reason for saying no, since Shadow Pines is, I'm going to read from it here, is a unique open space and recreational area that has well served the Penfield community and regional visitors since opening in 1985 as a public golf course and restaurant. This valuable open space asset is centered in predominantly residential southwestern portion of town of Penfield. Shadow Pines and the Dolomite Stone Quarry and Shadow Lake Golf Course to the east of the quarry, when taken together, form an important tract of land whose future use has been envisioned as recreational sanctuary in the town of Penfield 210 comprehensive plan, which I know is under revision, but it's still in effect for a year or two. And then I've incorporated that as figure 1, if you page down there. This was the future land use concept map that's in the comprehensive plan. And then I felt it's important to state that not only is a comprehensive plan sitting there, but it was pretty loudly or pretty
Confirmed, yeah.
strongly confirmed by all the public input that was received about Shadow Pines and of course the referendum vote. So when 7,000 residents turned out and 80% voted in favor of keeping this as open space, I think that's all we need to know, and it made it very easy to say that these proposed uses such as community center, recreation center, swimming facility, Penfield Public Library, the bus garage, and I guess there was also our own grounds, and it was a highway department, I think was one of the recommendations, and the solar field. Basically, I want to reemphasize the idea that this is recreational or sanctuary use, and development is to be either avoided or at least minimized and focused on recreational activities. So I think it's important to get that in another part, maybe up front in the report somewhere, or whether there's an executive summary. I don't know if our report's going to be that big, but somewhere this ought to be background to everything we're doing here. And then if we switch over to...
Before you leave that though, can I just make a comment?
Sure.
Can we go back to the uses? One of the things that you might want to think about adding possibly to the list you have, which is fine. If you remember, we had the one guy come in, Paul Sanders came in about the golf driving ranges and all that business. And I'm not picking on him by any means, but I'm thinking to myself that you might want to, but you might want to think about uses that might have a tendency to dominate a lot of land use area. That would take away that use from others for, walking or whatever it might be they'd be doing. But it seems to me that you don't really want to have a use that would dominate the rest of the property. Or take that away from the public.
Let's switch over to section 3 now, and I started thinking about, okay, when we turn this report in and we all go home, the town board's going to have to deal with the day-to-day and the year-to-year proposals that are going to keep pouring in, and there's going to be constant pressure to do stuff here, to develop, to add, to change. And so as a lead into section 3, which is facilities, I thought about maybe pull it down a little bit. No, I'm sorry, move it up. Yeah. I was thinking about general principles or guidelines or something to leave with the town board as they go through the work. And keep in mind the vision that's in the comprehensive plan, that it be preserved as recreational or open space, and that was strongly endorsed by our residents. And so, and we can add to this or subtract to it. I was thinking of some general principles, like development must be minimized and focused on recreational activities. And that reversibility is good. When approving new facilities, the ease of returning the site to its original condition should be considered. And less is better. Before doing it, try to find another location somewhere else. We thought in our group that benches, picnic tables, and open pavilions similar to the one out in back here, and rustic lodges are all desirable. We'd like to see handicapped access to some undeveloped open space, as well as to facilities, handicap access to the facilities, as well as open space. No motor vehicles, snowmobiles, etc. Fences, we don't think we want to see much about fences, especially the cyclone fence.
Talk about it. I've never heard the term cyclone fence before.
What should we call it?
No, what is your understanding of a cyclone fence? I just wanted to...
The wire mesh fences.
Chain link fence.
Yeah. Okay, chain link.
No, I just wanted clarification because that was new to me.
This must be an old-fashioned term.
I knew what it was.
Chain link, okay. We'll change that.
No, it's fine. I just...
It might throw the readers.
I want it to make sense.
Might throw the readers a bit. Not from the cyclones here.
You may have heard this before. There's a demand in the neighborhood to have some sidewalk and access points to get in and out of the park. And I think in Huntington Meadow there's a proposal to put sidewalks down there, so you're going to get some, you know, a nice way for traffic to come up here and then be able to cross into the park would be good. And this is maybe more my idea. I mean, I'd like to see some replanting programs to replace all those trees that came down, the damaged and the diseased trees. I'd like to see replaced. And maybe in other areas, we ought to be able to plant where we'd like to see maybe a maple grove to get sap out of. And for the future, I think I want to ask the town board to keep in mind that at some point the stone quarry is going to turn into could be a really nice, big, deep Clearwater lake. It's going to be good for paddling, fishing, and scuba diving, and we ought to keep some space on the south portion. Here's something, are we going to call it the south portion, or are we going to say front 9, back 9? We ought to get that. We ought to get the front 9, back 9, I think, out of the report generally.
I think that's a fair comment to refer to as the
For the
northern
future,
section.
for people reading, you know, in the future.
I'm not
It's
sure.
not going to make sense.
I'm not sure if we were consistent about it, but one of the things we tried to do was to say former back 9,
Yeah.
former front 9, but I think, saying north and south section.
But anyway,
South and north is good.
if the committee agrees, I think we ought to say something about trying to reserve space in the neighborhood where the current maintenance shed is to have an access over to the lake when it's there.
Well, just out of curiosity, why wouldn't you just build it where the lake is?
Build what?
Whatever facilities you would need to accessorize the
You're
lake.
talking about crossing a
I
road.
want
to
to be able to get from the back 9 over to the lake, across Wayland Road.
The south portion.
Well, that's just a crosswalk, but I mean,
Oh,
in terms of building
it's got to be
facilities,
more than just a crosswalk there.
well, I don't know what else you could do.
A pedestrian bridge or a tunnel.
Those are expensive. I've been trying to get one for
No,
30
but-
years over Empire
but-
Boulevard, and I'm not gonna get there.
No.
But I'm thinking,
I see what
you're really trying to discourage
I see
people
what you're
from crossing
saying. You
in
want to,
unsafe
if you have
locations.
restrooms or things like that
Oh, yeah,
over there.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. And
Also-
and parking, and the parking. should be
Yeah,
over there.
there's plenty of area for it over there.
But we should have a way to.
But
get
also, Bob, remember that the committee's charge is really not on the quarry.
there. No, I know, but I'm talking about saving space on the south
Okay.
side.
I don't think any of us have to worry about it.
Not trying to shut the quarry down.
Most of us won't
Don't get
be
me
here
wrong.
when it
No one's shutting it down.
One of the things I thought when looking at this, it was that utilizing the town park and properties document, there's a document that talks about those kinds of things which could be
Yeah.
mentioned here and could be used. And also Eric brought up when we were talking about the motor vehicles that, you know, we may not only be talking about gas vehicles, we may be talking about electric or battery operated type vehicles that are
Oh, true.
now available. So that
Yeah,
may need to get.
if you don't mind, Bob, I'd like to send you like a wordsmith version of that, because e-bikes is one of the things that I was thinking about including in our section until
Okay.
I saw that you had that.
It's a good point.
Because I think a lot of people who ride e-bikes view them as being bicycles
Not
that are
as
just pedal
public.
assisted,
Not as-
but a lot of people who don't ride them view them as just,
Yeah,
they are
right.
electric motorcycles. is
Right.
what they
Yeah,
are, so.
and the scooters as well, there's the scooters that are
Yeah.
available, or the skateboards that, you know, kids
Or
have.
risk.
And start on fire here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
there's a
those
lot
kind
of
of
stuff
vehicles
around
that-
it, yeah.
But those general principles, I think,
Yeah, that-
belong in another place, along perhaps with the comprehensive plan. But so then,
Well, you could use it as part of the conclusion of the document or before the,
conclusion or, yeah,
before the
right
recommended
forward or something
uses.
like that. I agree.
The way you wrote it, I feel like it's a good, it's a conclusionary statement, just to summarize what was discussed above. Or, again, you could intro with it, but that's
Because I
up
think
to
the
the
general
committee.
principles apply more than just our section. It
Yeah,
applies to-
Yeah, and
I think that if it is there, I think we should go around the table and talk about those
Right.
again, because I'm thinking about, you know, what do we need for wildlife signs or that kind of stuff. You know,
Right.
all these kinds of things that probably should be in a comprehensive list. And that, you know, so that.
But they're all
would be-
necessary, and they're all good recommendations.
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
to take it one step farther, you could, when it comes time for that and you talk about these items,
Mhm.
it might be beneficial for you to say, all right, we've gone through our recommended uses, we've gone through the uses that are not recommended, and then as conclusion, here are some general principles and their short, medium, long-term goals of these things that could be broken up there to provide the direction somebody would need. It's just a thought.
Good.
Going through this, I found myself referring to Shadow Pines as the Shadow Pines Recreation Area, or recreational area, maybe.
The property is probably a easier term to type.
But we didn't want to call it a parks, but if we
That's why we use the
referred to
term
it-
property.
Should we make a proposal, a suggestion that it be named the Shadow Pines Recreational Area and signage similar to
Oh, you're
what Monroe
in charge
County
of
puts up
making
at the parks?
recommendations regarding the property.
Yeah.
It's your
Well, I
prerogative.
would suggest that to the group, that we give it a name.
I think for the purposes of the document, it might be easier to just refer to it as the property throughout the document than if we wanted to have
Okay.
a separate section
I
that
would
talked about
recommend
naming.
keeping it as
we could-
generic before we get too much confusion. If we can refer to the north side, the south side,
Even
the
if we call it
property
Shadow
and
Pines
generic.
North and Shadow Pines South, maybe that would be the way to handle
Yeah,
it.
that's true too.
Good, that works. Now, Zach, you're saying we got to change the format here to match section?
What?
Like, to meet like Eric's.
We need to change our format
Prototype.
to match up with Eric. Because he went first.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you'd gone first, it would have been you.
No, you're there. I just think there's opportunity to expand on some things. That's all. And I would read the language that they use from the first group, and see how you can apply it to your sections.
But it's a good point, and I think you just brought up, if you're gonna refer to the, all of you, and all of your groups, you can refer to Shadow Pines North or Shadow Pines South. Everybody do that, not just
Right.
one or two of you.
North and south,
Okay.
westwards.
Maybe you'll coin a new phrase for that area out there.
I do like the idea of having kind of the general bullet points here. But I think, to Terry's point, I think at some point,
You said something at the last meeting about,
yeah, I think at some
got me
point though,
thinking.
we should go through this and just make sure that everybody's on the,
But to get a good
Right.
comprehensive
Same page.
list from the whole
Yeah.
group, I think that would be great.
Well, you gotta make sure everybody's in consensus on all these comments that we come up with at the end. If everybody's supportive of all of them, or at least the general.
Well,
Well,
at
majority of the
some
group is
point,
there with
you're
it.
going to combine everything, and then we'll
You'll have a final
review.
report.
Yeah, so we've gotta, figure we run through it tonight, see where we're at, and then.
I would have liked to have
Next-
more people here tonight because there was a question I wanted to ask the group, but I might ask it at the end. We'll see about that.
Well, okay, so then the lodges, we really thought the cart house, or that's behind the Clark House, is an excellent place to start if it's available. If the respondents to the RFP don't need that, we could see that being easily converted to a lodge. That would provide a good spot. And have bathrooms that had accessibility from the outside, similar to the lodge up at Harris Whalen. The bathrooms you don't have to be in the lodge to use the facilities. If we have one, we're not sure. We think that you've got to see what the demand is. Put one lodge in, and we'd like to start there, would be the easiest place to start. The facility, the utilities are there, or at least close. You probably have to extend the sewer line, but we didn't want to get too deep in the weeds of thinking about utilities, but we realize once you start building a lodge on the back nine, you've got a problem, unless you're able to use the existing maintenance shed, which is probably not likely. So we don't know about that, but the lodges, we would like them to be more rustic in nature. Now, the cart house, you've got a building to start with, but if you're going to build a new lodge on the back nine, we'd like to see it more, like log cabin type, and have a fireplace and maybe a source of heat, maybe an electric burner, and pretty much a carry-in, carry-out operation with bathrooms probably located. And maybe 6 or 8 picnic tables inside, or 4 to 6, something like that, but pretty rudimentary, basic,
How do you compare it to the lodges we have now?
less than Dolomite.
Yeah,
less than Dolomite.
less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a fireplace, if possible, either wood burning or gas, but most likely wood burning, because Otherwise, you gotta run a gas line out to wherever it is.
Yeah, Dolomite is like the Cadillac, and we're looking for like an Edsel or something.
Now, is that the
There's a
consensus
lodge
of the
at
group?
Mendon
Because
Pond.
obviously, I mean, we've heard from Chris, there's a huge demand for.
Right, yeah.
Or
I've been to Dolomite, and I think
all-season
it's,
shelters.
I think it's an
and
awesome building.
Oh, it is.
You know, I mean, if we could get it, I guess I don't understand why we wouldn't try to get something like that.
Just because of the nature of the
My view is,
back nine.
there's plenty of places to
Yeah.
build that type of lodge, either here or up at Rothfuss open space, and let's try to keep Shadow Pines open, natural, recreational as much as possible. A party house, I think of Dolomite as a party house. You know, the fully equipped kitchen, air conditioning and all of that, I don't see that, at least not starting out.
Well, we also thought that if you did a lodge, something like that, we talked about in the back nine, there's no parking.
Right.
There is
Well,
no
those are things-
access to it. That's
things would
why
have
we
to
talked
be-
basically
right.
rudimentary type of
I mean,
facility.
even if you have a rudimentary facility, you're still gonna have to have parking.
Yeah,
Yes,
but,
yeah.
You know, no matter what you do.
yeah,
you're gonna
oh,
need
we know
parking.
parking's an issue.
Right.
Parking is
I
an
mean,
issue.
I look at it with Dolomite, I know as soon as it's available, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, so to me, that's telling me that we don't have enough facilities like that. If you're, I don't know what the waiting period is to sign up for it. Like when you do it through the town, I don't know if it's starting.
Once it opens, it usually opens the first,
10
usually
o'clock
the
and it's
first
gone
Wednesday
in
in
5
December.
minutes.
And at 10 o'clock when it opens, what I'll say, prime weekends are gone within 20 minutes.
Right.
Chris, is that probably true through all our parks? You know, the Ellison and Mendon Ponds?
They all do them a little differently on how they do their
they all
annual,
get-
but they
they're all hard to
typically,
get into,
yeah,
I'm
they
pretty
typically,
sure.
especially, you know, from the time school gets out from grad parties through the summer into the early fall. You know, some of them, you know, some towns, the way they handle their, we'll say, lottery system, how you get a lodge is a little different, so it might be, you know, more difficult to track.
Isn't there something that more might come out of the comprehensive plan that's being looked at now? Let's take a look at what we,
Right.
that kind of thing in different parts of the town and as well. And this could be a part of that, but part of that look.
Right.
Right.
I mean, they'll look at the overall layout, I mean, based on the rec master plan, I'm sure
Yes, right,
there's a demand for more. We've been looking at another lodge, whether that goes at Rothfuss or not. I just want to make sure the group had consensus that, you know, as the rustic lodge, the style that we're looking for here, obviously, you know, there's a demand for more of the all-season, whether
Right.
they're a full kitchen and all that, but at least having heat and, you know, kind of a year-round use. You know, there's definitely demand for that with bathrooms and stuff inside of it. So just kind of making sure the group, where the consensus fell with the group on it and whatever his thought was on that.
Again, it would be good to have those bathrooms accessible from the outside as well as the inside.
And I think, you know, Harris Whalen does a nice job with that, that, you know,
Find
Marina
a
Park
prospect
doesn't have to be
escape or
open.
something like that. and
Yeah,
get the-
right, sure.
Well, it was kind of interesting, when I researched lodges, town-operated, not county-operated, but town-operated, Penfield is not too far off. I think Pittsford had a couple, I think Fairport has 3, and Webster has 3 that the town operates. So one additional would put us up with the town operated. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of county lodges that you can go through, but when the town owns them and operates them and,
We actually have a benchmark. We do a benchmark about every 2 years
Oh, okay.
of all the parks and enclosed lodges in the area, from county to the various towns. And that includes fee structure as well
Yeah.
as what amenities are.
and most of them had fireplace and some type of a kitchen perhaps, but most fireplace and electrical component to make some sort of food. Those are the town operated ones, so.
Well, how does the kitchen fit in with what Bob was saying before? You want a kitchen, Bob?
Give me,
I'm not proposing a full kitchen,
Yeah.
no. No, just.
Yeah.
but
Any
you could
running
have a-
water and all? and-
You could have a 4-burner electric stove to heat your soup or chili on.
Oh, it's not an issue then, Jenny. Right, Jenny?
pardon me, I'm sorry?
Are you advocating a kitchen?
No,
Oh, you're not?
No,
I thought
I'm
you were.
just
Oh, okay.
showing what other towns, town operated. facilities have.
We might be able to let other people worry about this.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Is it our, are we just saying,
No,
hey,
you're
we
making a
need a...
recommendation.
Right.
No,
If we get,
make
you
a
know,
good
we talk about
recommendation,
Dolomite
and
costs
then-
$350,000.
Let them work
That
together.
was, how many years ago?
That was a long time ago, and it was money that came from the state. We don't see a lot of that anymore, but in any event, it's just as Jenny said, you might not get the Cadillac, but you might get maybe something really nice. But 5 years from now, who knows what the needs will be at that point in time, right? That's gonna have to worry, whoever's doing that at that point in time, will have to worry about how they maintain the character of the area, and, you know, and how parking is installed so it's not impacting things, all sorts of things like that.
The next bit, oh, by the way, there's references to figures. Those are some photos that are they're down on the bottom. The next one, I don't know if it fits here, but we thought that, gee, we've got those T markers laying in the card house right now. We ought to make use of them.
Yeah.
They're really nice. They could help identify, you know,
I
what
hope we
used
don't
to
put
be.
them out and somebody takes them from.
That's always a problem.
Yeah,
Like they already have.
but
We
that
don't
would
have-
help
we don't have 18 of them
orient
anymore.
people out where
But yeah, I
they are
agree.
too.
I thought that when we did that one tour together, that they
You might be able to make a fireplace out of them.
Well, something to just kind of give you
A
some
little
historical
more
perspective.
cement around and make people in place.
Yeah.
Location, this is probably the max, one on the front, one on the back. Bathrooms can be located in the card house and maintenance shed. That's a thought. I think the maintenance shed is going to be the maintenance shed, but you could have some outside accessible facilities, restrooms there. Okay, we covered that. Open air pavilions, what we mean by this is a shelter or open air pavilion that's just a roof over a space to have some picnic tables.
Linear park?
Yeah, there's one right back here.
Yeah, right.
Thunderstorm shelter.
6 to 8 tables with a charcoal grill alongside, and of course a waste basket. We think the pavilions with picnic tables should be located where there's activity, such as if there's going to be a ball field or there's going to be a disc golf course or something like that. You ought to choose the location such that it's close to other activities, and then share whatever parking is used for that.
That was one of the things we talked about, is if we're gonna put a playground, put it by where pavilions are.
Yeah.
You know, so,
They
similar
should
to
be
Dolomite.
co-located, right. Consider access to parking. We didn't like the idea of standalone picnic tables, just scattering them around. We didn't think that was appropriate. So we didn't recommend them. You could have a standalone picnic near, say, a playground site, but we wouldn't want them out along the paths and the hiking trails.
Yeah.
People are going to leave trash and...
Yeah, benches were another matter. You could have random
Yeah,
Right.
benches-
memorialized benches
wherever you
here and
want
there,
them,
but not the pavilion.
Festival site, farmer's market, where in support of that should be located near the existing parking area, and could probably even spread into that area where they used to put the tent up for tournaments and weddings on the front lawn of the Clark House. This is mentioned this in the other section also, in the general principles. We'd like to have access points for the neighborhoods, including Colonial and Arrowhead, Huntington Meadow, Denonville Ridge, Scribner and Treebrook, which would have to cross Atlantic, so we would need a safe. I don't know whether there's a crossing light there or not. I don't think there is.
Might want to share. You could probably share those points with Group 4 too. I think that is one of the topics.
And need to think about how to safely get across from the Clark House to Shadow Pine South. It's better now, it's safer now with the trees down, because when you're crossing, at least you can see across the corner, but the cars coming from Clark Road from Huntington Meadow and that way, there's a hill there. There's enough of a hill where it blocks the view. You've got to, it's a little tricky to get across when the traffic's running. So you're gonna need a well-marked cross path with maybe flashing lights or
And
something.
Mark, you mentioned you guys were installing some of these,
The county.
oh, the county.
We had a grant, we worked with the county on,
Okay.
the county's taking the lead. They're
So we'll
doing
be getting an idea of what they're
some on,
like.
2 on Baird Road by the community center.
Okay.
And then they've got
5 Mile line,
2
you
going in on
said?
5 Mile, 1 by Liberty, and then 1 south of 441.
You could have toddlers on
That's supposed to be the end of
and
summer.
tricycles and
So
stuff
I think-
like that.
I think that'll be a
It's gonna
good-
be a
Yeah,
challenge.
that'll be,
That'll be a good first
Are
rollout
they
for
like
us to see how
pedestrian
they work.
activated things that they like in the road and the signs?
Not in the road, there'll be the signs, so there'll be a solar-powered ped indicator, you can hit it, and then you'd have flashing lights. In the street, you'll have they call them piano key kind of crosswalks out there with it. The state and the county has yet to be supportive of having anything in the
There you
pavement.
go. Something, yeah.
So it'd be a solar-powered, you've got a ped indicator on the left and the right, you hit that, and then you get a little flashing
flash.
beacon, that kind of just highlights that it's a pedestrian crossing. You'll have advanced signs saying pedestrian crossing up ahead, and then obviously indicated there.
Okay.
That's a crosswalk. A lot of times they've gone with they call them piano keys, but kind of the perpendicular.
You'll need that
edges across
advance
the
warning,
street.
because if you're driving up Clark Road towards the intersection, you don't see the crossing until you get up on top of the hill.
Yeah, and now it's becoming, or will become more pedestrian oriented. That's something we'll take a look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah, 'cause we did it with golfers for years, right?
Yeah, but it's, you have to watch carefully. And,
Amherst,
you don't have little kids in tow. And,
Amherst College has this unique system that you activate it, pedestrian activated, hit a thing, you have the flashers, but there's also flashing lights in the road, which is excellent. I mean,
Get your attention.
it really gets your attention.
Unfortunately, the DOT will not allow.
So
this.
they're just throwing that out there, but that's a very effective
Big chain link
crosswalk.
fence that comes down and everything.
It's a cyclone fence, it's a cyclone fence, all right?
Yeah, I was thinking of saying that.
The spikes come out there, then they go back down.
What about an elevated crosswalk like there is in like Shone Place?
Yeah,
It's
RT
kind of a
does that.
speed bump and a
yeah.
crosswalk.
If we weren't
and-
plowing, it's a different situation.
In a parking lot, yes. On a road, again, the state will not allow that. As far as state traffic and highway law. So I know Baytown Plaza's got kind of raised medians and stuff in there as you're crossing.
We have one back here.
Ped crossings, but on a
Yeah, there's
road,
one
they-
right back here,
again, it's on
but they're on.
town property. It's not a main road. You've got a little hump in there or a speed hump or whatever. But on a regular highway, as of yet, I have not seen the county DOT or the state allow that.
Yeah,
Clark
RT
Road's a
doesn't
state.
do that.
Clark Road. Both those are- Clark Road is ours. Wayland Road is county,
It's not just jurisdiction, it's road use.
but it's also, we fall back to state highway law as well as the town. But
If there's a lawsuit, you have to do that. You have
Yeah,
to-
yeah,
that's it.
Yes, I was gonna say RT has a lot of them all around campus.
That's
It's a
private.
wonderful thing.
Yeah.
private
it's a
property,
Private
and
property,
they can
so it's, yeah.
kind
And
of,
and we do that here, we do that on this campus,
Mhm, mhm.
but in the main drag, you can't
Yeah.
do it. Okay.
Gazebos, possibility. There's a nice gazebo right out and back here in the town. I took a picture of it.
Near Dolomite.
Might be nice to have one located in the area where the handicapped access path is. It would make a nice combination to go along with that, I think. And this is where we say our benches are recommended to be located at appropriate scenic sites and alongside paved pathways. Opportunities and constraints, particularly for lodges, the infrastructure is going to be a big challenge given the buffer, the 200-foot buffer. So it means you've got to put a road in and you've got to extend your utilities, your water and
Yeah.
electricity and sewerage. And I don't know what you're going to run into on the back, but in the front 9 you're going to run into Dolomite. But, so that's why we kind of like to use the cart house for our lodge there. In the back, I don't know, it might be easy because I think a lot of that was topsoil removed from the quarry, a lot of those hills and stuff, so it might not be such a challenge to lay the utilities down, but we're talking about, you know, infrastructure. And then the funding sources for that. And it will use public funds to put that in, so that's a consideration. Opportunity, I don't know what to say here, leadership organization, festivals, I don't, that was from Trish, I wish you were here
Yeah, not quite sure.
to explain that. Possible funding sources, you know, the obvious places, anonymous donations, you can sell tote bags, you could sell the naming rights similar to the way you named the Dolomite Lodge. You could have funding drives that involve some of the groups in town, the community groups, you know, who knows, Rotary, Friends of Shadow Pine, people like that might jump at the chance to have a fundraising effort to get their name on a plaque or something like that. The biggest thing for the lodges, of course, would be there'll be an investment, a capital investment has to be made, but you'll get some maintenance and some of your money back, I think, through the fee structure you charge. So there's some income to be produced there, and I don't know the financials on that, Chris, on whether. I'm sure the fees cover for the maintenance, but I don't know if they.
From a maintenance standpoint?
I don't know whether they cover.
You don't break even.
Enough capital to build a new lodge.
It'll take a long time to be able to cover the cost of a facility.
That's
like
what
a dome.
that's what I thought. And for smaller projects, you could involve the Eagle Scouts or BOCES. I know that BOCES built a beautiful gazebo at the Shepherd Home, so there's the kids
done
like.
actually done a lot of these projects
Yeah.
for us.
Oh, really? Yeah. And there's, Trish has a lead there on some source of grants. That's pretty much it. And there's some photos down below of all the stuff we referred to.
Bob, you have one note in here about overnight camping sites.
Oh, yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
something you
that
want to talk
was-
about with the group?
That was in our group of facility. I don't know how it got in there because I don't see it on your list, your original list of comments, but somebody suggested.
I believe that came just through the conversation
It
of the
came out
group.
of our
I think
meetings,
the
I
Boy
think.
Scouts came up and,
Anyway, we took it off our list and said it's not recommended, largely because we think the Shadow Pine site should be closed down at dusk.
I guess, what's the group's thoughts? Because originally, we had it that the group was supportive of Boy Scout campground or camping area potential, so I just make sure.
We changed our mind on that. If that came up.
Well, I just want to make sure the
Yeah.
rest of the group is
Well,
agreeing with that.
yeah, I had a feeling it came from one of us, but I'm not sure. But we're recommending that not be done.
Yeah, I recall asking about it at one point. I thought somebody had brought it up as a good idea for camping spaces, and
I thought the Boy Scouts had at least
yeah,
requested it.
that's what somebody
That was
said
one of their
Boy Scouts
comments, and
requested.
originally the group had said, yes, we're okay with that, so I just want to make sure the group's okay with that
Yeah,
change.
well,
and-
we pictured in the back nine, there's gonna be hiking trails and biking trails going by, and I can't find a lot of sites where you would wanna
I
have
do like the campfire part, the open campfire.
naked Boy Scouts running around playing, doing what they do when they're out camping.
Being a former Boy Scout.
Yes. And a scoutmaster.
The Boy Scouts I've heard about.
Very eye-opening right now.
Someone just
about
did.
the Boy Scouts.
I think one of the concerns we had too was for the camping was open campfires and whatnot, perhaps. We didn't like that,
And
Yes,
that
that.
and
so.
I just want to make sure we got consensus, because that's a change.
I'm okay with no.
I am too, and I think with camping, you know, you're in a gray area because then you've got people that might be wanting to drive their RVs on the property. I feel like we're getting down a slippery slope if we start
And
to.
you've also got residential around the area.
Right.
where-
I would suggest that you take your comments, they're all good comments, and put them into a rationale as to why you decided not to do that from the original thought.
do what with it, I'm sorry? Put it,
Under your not recommended
Rationale.
section, put some wording in there to the effect that
Okay.
you've reevaluated the you know, the cons associated with it, or the constraints, and the rationale as to why you don't think it's a good idea anymore.
Well, they're suggesting that they move it to one of the other non-recommended groups
Yeah,
that fit more of their
that's what we were trying to do.
descriptions.
Yeah, whatever. You know.
So I
I
would
think
just,
it's a good idea, though, that you picked up on it, and this is why we're not recommending it anymore.
I don't have a problem with tent only camping. I think we could very easily identify spots where you could have campfires that would be well away from trees and stuff like that. I don't think there's a risk of like starting forest fires here or anything like that. Like the bigger issue would just be putting it in a place where vehicles could get to.
You'd have to keep the property up, you know what I mean? Like, you'd have to, I don't know if we're talking about mowing the back nine or shadow paint
Not
south.
necessarily. You can pitch a tent on, and I mean,
Well, I know
any
you
open
could, but
space right now.
that's right. I mean, if we're not taking care of the property, you're gonna have loose grass, you're gonna have dry grass and that type of thing, which kind of opens up to the fires and whatnot.
As for closing at night, I don't know why we would do that. Are any of the other town parks closed at night?
Yeah, close
Yeah,
the
they
house.
all
Yeah, they all are, except on, I know at Fellows Road, you can rent that and you can have like scouts camp in the facility, but not out of doors.
But that's not in Penfield.
No, that's,
I was just saying, I've
no,
already
that's not
been out there
Penfield,
well
it's
past
Fairport.
dusk
It's
skiing
Barrington.
twice
Let's
in the last
discuss it.
week.
When we say camping, are we talking about pitching tents and
That's what I thought you were talking about.
up in Webster Park, is that
I
Fellows?
don't think
where
we
they have
are
the, they have the lodges?
Fellows is over in, off of Fellows Road. I know, as a Girl Scout leader, we used to camp, you know, rent the place overnight, and the kids,
Well,
the girls would bring their sleeping
Sounds like we
bags
need more discussion on
indoors.
this.
But that was an indoor camping thing.
You brought the topic up for discussion.
Yeah,
We can do that.
It ended up in the facilities section, and the three of us decided we
no.
didn't like
It's
it.
okay, I mean, we'll just have to have discussion with the group.
Yeah, put it in the parking lot, and then the next meeting,
Mini
when
committee.
bigger group, just
Right.
I mean,
confirm that, just make sure we get
Dolomite would be a
consensus on it.
perfect indoor facility for kids to camp or something like that. That's like Fellows Road over in Barrington, they do allow it. I mean, but not the out-of-door stuff, so.
Nothing good ever happens after 10 o'clock at night. When you're under the age of 18.
Especially in the summertime.
Yeah.
The Boy Scouts will want to, go out and cut firewood and, build a fireplace, fire pit and,
We'll hold it open as
Ditch,
an issue for discussion.
put a tent up and put the drainage ditch
I
around it.
mean, is
and all
there
that.
a lack of Boy Scout camping facilities around?
Yeah, there's not much
There aren't
overnight
enough?
camping anywhere in the county or anything.
Overnight stuff, yeah.
There's Webster Park, and then I think once a year they're allowed to camp at Men and Ponds.
Once a year?
I think so.
So
Why once a year?
are they restricted?
I think just because it's like a one-time event only for scout groups. It's not open to the public. So there could be an opportunity like that where, once or twice a year for the local scout groups, that something like that is.
I just remember the camping sites up at Massawepie get pretty gnarly, and even they work hard to keep them clean.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, those are more permanent campsites though.
Yes.
They are, but,
That's a
Okay.
bit of a different
But-
story.
If you're gonna allow camping, you gotta have a fixed location. You can't let them just go out any place they want.
There would have to be a lot of considerations. I wouldn't necessarily want to rule it out entirely, but I think that it'd have to come with a lot of
We might have to
constraints.
find a way to kick the can down the road a little way.
Yeah.
This one.
I like that thinking.
kicking can.
Well,
That it's not recommended.
camping is a TBD, but we need more members at the meeting, I guess, to take a vote on that.
Alright, folks, we got one last group 6. Jimmy, I think you sent that to me today.
Yes, I did. So it's Subcommittee 6, the report for land use of commercial and mixed use development, residential development, retirement community, and cemetery. And what Trish and I decided, we would use the same premise as Bob, Trish, and I used for the facilities, that is the vision portrayed in the comprehensive plan. We put all those bullets, and I didn't know that I was going to have to live up to Eric, so I just did my little succinct, we don't recommend any of the above, plain and simple. So if you want me to do it,
I would
will
expand
do
upon
that.
it a little bit, and
refine?
just a little, just a little. Just for those uses. You might want to look back at the moratoriums report because they did explore land use development
Right.
as part of their charge. It was just one of their 3 topics. You might find some content there.
Okay.
But yeah, then certainly you can go back to the comprehensive plan and support some of that. These general principles that we came up with, it sounds like that's going to have its own section, so I wouldn't want to repeat it too much in your group's area. Certainly reference it if you feel necessary, but I would expand upon it a little bit.
Yeah, we should seek input from everybody on these, on the general principles, I think, the guidelines to the town board.
Yeah, I just put it in there just to reinforce. I don't think, I didn't realize that each report was going to be separate, inclusive. But if each subcommittee report was going to be separate, I wanted to reinforce the general principles.
Oh yeah, no,
That's
it'll
plain
all
and
be
simple.
inclusive in one
Okay.
document. But also, kind of talk about, if there was any committee discussion that you can refer to, or
Okay.
from the committee standpoint, why certain things wouldn't be recommended.
You mean, just because nobody wanted them?
If there are reasons why, then yes. If it turns out to be a simple no, and there's nothing more to add to it, then that's what the committee agrees to.
Okay.
Everyone has to agree to this report at the end, so
Okay.
if everyone agrees with what you wrote, then
You don't have to convince the 5 of us. You have to convince each other.
Yeah?
I'm kind of thinking that we should begin our report with a general statement of principles
What you threw in there the other day.
and state that our overarching vision is as such. Using, by the way, a lot of the words that Bob used,
Yeah.
were wonderful.
Feel free.
And
No copyright.
and then, as we do the individual sections, we can elaborate if necessary.
Okay.
But the basic principle should be out there right at the beginning, it seems to me.
I agree, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I like that. I think that's
We
that's
can,
good, and I think though,
Like a
however,
statement of purpose.
people that put forth ideas and that made the list at one time or another will all be looking to see what did they say about my idea.
Mhm. I agree.
And I think we owe it to them to be
Yeah, all
saying
right.
something about the idea, what the committee thought of it. But I think you're exactly correct, that an overarching commentary at the beginning would be very helpful, and then referred to.
and we can send out the list that Bob started of general principles. We'll send that out as a separate item and just say, here's what's been started, add to it, add comments to it if
Modify
you're
it,
concerned,
yeah. Could
modify
be-
it, whatever, and then, if we can kind of hone in on that.
Be
and
a
then
budget.
next
Should just
meeting-
one person sort of be assigned to write that? I mean, would it be easier if one person just kind of assembled that and then put it out for comment?
Somebody's volunteering and wants,
I mean,
sounds like Susan's
I can volunteer.
volunteering.
Well, yeah, I can do it. I can start it out. I'll kick it off.
for this
It's all we can do.
this introductory piece you're referring to.
Just so I'm clear, we're talking about sort of, this is what the committee was charged with. This
Purpose.
is what our vision is, this is our purpose, this is what we are keeping in mind during
I think we have that in there.
I did
A lot of
that.
that.
Yeah, that's starting.
The outline.
Right, but I thought, okay,
The general principles piece you're talking.
If
yeah.
you're talking about just the general principles piece,
Yeah.
yeah, that's somewhere where we're going after, before we get into this discussion of what the groups have done for land use recommendations. It sounds like that's where you guys want to put this general principles section, would be either after committee charge or after how we collected comments for the recommendations.
Committee charge.
Just
Yeah.
any of the Roman numeral numbers somewhere in here, you could insert that topic.
Sounds good.
Committee charge, yeah.
So I think after that, a lot of, probably 90% of the thumbs down could just be referring to this as going, well, we're not gonna allow, or off-roading off-road vehicles because we decided that motor vehicles would not be allowed.
Yeah. Another point that I think we should have, maybe right after the general principles, is a statement, a restatement of all of our hearings and all the inputs, and to say that we considered everything, to mention them specifically. And then I want to second what Terry said, that when we reject things, well, we should do it explicitly, so that people at least know that we gave it consideration.
So I have just one to respond to that. I mean, the purpose of this was to address all the comments that were received and how the
right.
committees responded to it. So that information is going to be in the
No, it
report.
was in there, it's up. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if you need to duplicate that effort.
Okay, no, no.
Okay.
We're essentially duplicating, just so I'm clear about what I think I'm supposed to do, is we're duplicating.
Well, what did you want to volunteer for?
Well, I thought we were going to be writing a general commentary.
You were writing the whole thing, eh?
Yeah, no, listen, I'm happy to consolidate once it's all done, that I can definitely do. But to include sort of this top half of this document where because I've seen this now show up 3 times in the last
Yeah.
documents that but just to use that, but yet expand on it a little bit more as kind of a, I'll call it an executive summary for lack of a better
Yeah,
term at
yeah,
this point. But
good
I'm
point.
happy I'll take the initiative to do that and seek some input maybe, because I know Bob's done a lot of work on that as well in some of these documents. Maybe Bob, I'm volunteering you to work with me on this, all right? So we'll kick it off. We'll kick it off and then we'll send it out and then I'm not gonna be offended if you don't like it.
Just tell me what
or-
you want me to say.
Well, it sounds like your group gave people a starting point with
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
things you put together in the group 3 section.
This idea of having a name and signage, should we put that in there, or is that gonna happen automatically?
Oh, you could do that if you want.
We ought to have, some
I think
signs
as
welcoming
much
people.
thought
to
process as you put into it is gonna benefit everybody down the
We
road.
need kind of a map,
Yeah.
an orientation to what's on
Yep.
the south side, what's on the north side. That'll
We'll
have to-
provide you with some of that technical stuff. We'll get you mapping. and-
No, he's talking about like wayfinding signage when you're on the property and then
Oh,
things to identify it.
I don't think you need to get into that much depth at this
No,
point in time,
okay.
because I think we're probably gonna have people part of the.
All right, we don't
overall
have to,
scheme of
we don't
things
have to recommend
prepared.
the obvious.
That's
But
it.
I think the
It's
idea
miscellaneous.
of bringing the idea of having wayfinding signage is a great
Okay.
recommendation, so I certainly keep that.
So, and just to tack on to Susan's thought, I know not everyone's here tonight, and this is the comment I was gonna hold for another meeting, but something to think about is appointing, or one person volunteering, to kind of be, alright, once your sections are done, send it to me, and we'll put it into an ultimate final document report, and usually someone on the committee takes that charge to do that. So it's just something to think about, doesn't have to happen tonight, but just
Susan, I
something to
thought
think
that's what
about.
you
You're right, that's right.
Well, she said-
And you were gonna help out, right? You were gonna help, you guys are
Now, bye.
Everybody is.
It's fine.
You've obviously never been in military service.
I nominate Beth.
I can volunteer.
Oh, yeah, I second that.
Again,
That's
I was
fine.
gonna wait for more
Kelly.
people.
And that piece, frankly, is not a difficult piece because it's written, and I'm happy to give it consolidated.
Well, in fairness to you guys, you're always here. I mean, you guys are always here. Let's get everybody to get back together again. Maybe somebody who's not been here can help. do some
My
of the-
problem is
carry the heavy
I
lifting.
I can't handle the formatting in Word. That's
Well, I was
beyond
gonna
my
follow up. We'll help
capability.
with
Me too.
formatting at the end.
I
It's more
can't-
about, let's get the
Yeah,
content
just get
together
the
so everyone
content,
can
we'll take
review
care of
it.
it for you.
And I can do that. I'm happy to, I'll volunteer for
If
that.
you need help, let us know.
I will. Don't worry. You'll be the first person I call, Jim.
Very good.
Or Zach.
I'm calling you the collector.
Collector.
The fixer.
The fixer. Oh, I like that better.
So the
Sorry.
other groups, any issues, concerns? I know, Jeff, you weighed in, Steve, I know, were you working?
I have to say, I'll come, I've been out of town, I'll
Okay.
do that.
Okay, I'm just making sure everybody else is all set and we're not leaving anybody abandoned on,
It sounds like you're all pretty
Sections,
comfortable
but-
with where you are.
sounds like everybody's coming along well and.
Now it's your turn to talk.
Any
All right,
other?
well, we got a few minutes left, and I'm going to try and get you out of here early, but what I wanted to do is, can you go to the website? First of all, I want to tell you that I had a chance to talk to Andy Moore today, and Andy apologizes. He had to do some work at the airport, and I understand that. He wanted me to convey to you that he wanted you to understand, and this has been true of the various committees we've had over the last several years, just because you're done with your report doesn't mean you're not on the committee anymore. It's probably a lifelong process at this point in time, but he wanted me to convey to you the fact that we have finished our RFP. The RFP went online on Friday afternoon. He wants you to know that as we start getting in responses to the RFP, the staff and the board will keep you apprised as to what comes in, where we go through the process to determine who are the final respondents, if we get any responses, and let you know what's going on here through the process. So even though we won't be meeting again on a regular basis, at least through emails, and if you have to meet again for some reason, certainly you can do that, but he will make sure that you all have access to who the respondents are, what their proposals are, and as they start marching through the process to determine what are the best three or whatever the case may be, they will make you aware of that as part of the process.
Is that information sort of confidential, or is it public information, when they...
Which information?
The response.
The proposals?
Well, what'll
that
happen is,
come-
I think because you're on the committee, they'll probably send you an email. I don't know where they're gonna be in terms of telling the whole world we got 82 of them.
Yeah, but if I want to share it with Jim Froome or somebody like that,
Well,
is that okay?
it's public information. I mean,
Yeah,
if it
okay.
comes in and somebody foils it, they have every right to access it. So I don't want you to feel guilty if you're gonna share it, but the point's gonna be, he's gonna try and keep you apprised of who's coming in.
Right, yeah,
And then as they start whittling down to the top 5 or the top 3 or whoever that is,
yeah.
he'll let you know that as well. So at least you've been involved in it since day one. They're gonna keep you part of the process, so at least you know what's going on with it.
We just ask that you be responsible with information.
Yeah, well, as I say, it's
That's why I
public
asked, yeah.
information, so.
Just
you
went
have
out
that.
last Friday?
It actually went out Thursday afternoon. We had to do some fine tweaking. I didn't like the format, and I'll show you what I didn't like in a minute. But I gotta say, I gotta give credit to Dave and to Brian. They did a phenomenal job preparing the webpage for us and all that business. So,
Yeah, the webpage
so
looks
what you
nice.
do is when you go, has anybody been on it yet?
Yeah.
I did.
Have you?
Looks
Okay,
nice,
great.
yeah.
So when you go to the website,
Can you go back to the homepage?
yeah, go back to the homepage for a second, please. If you go right over to this quick links, on the left-hand side, it says Clark House RFP. You go into that. The reason I didn't like it is because there's a section on the right-hand side that talks about, where is it? I'm trying to find it now. Bid notices, under notices. For some reason, the way it came out, the bid notices were the very first thing that came up. And so if you clicked into that, you would have been off the trail and not knowing where you're going. So
Yeah.
Dave fixed that for us. So what you do is you go in, there's a little blurb about it. Can you go to is that the very top?
It was.
All right. So it talks a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing and some of the things we're encouraging the proposals to incorporate. And there's a part down here, you see the link that says Clark House walkthrough request form.
Yeah, I saw that.
You're gonna have to go in, you're gonna have to prove to us that you're serious about doing this, and you're just not somebody down the street that wants to walk into their neighbor's house on an open house type deal. Because we're going to have a month period where we're gonna provide potential respondents the ability to walk through these buildings. And town staff's gonna be the one that has to do it, and we're gonna be eating up a lot of town staff time doing this, so we don't wanna just do it for the sake of somebody having an afternoon off. But in any case, it talks a little bit about who you are, what your title is, where your address is, your email, and if you can go down a little bit. The company that you're associated with, if you have one, you may or may not. And I think is at the very bottom? And then, yes, and then your proposal, and then some of the dates that you might be interested in walking through the site with us. And then if you have other attendees in your group, who they might be, that will probably whittle down people that are truly serious about the project. So we can go back a second now. Dave and Brian, so
There's the RFP.
this is where I want to go. The RFP, but I don't want to diminish the, if you can go down a little bit, make when the RFP is towards the top. Dave and Brian prepared a video of the Clark House, and they went through the entire Clark House. And it's really great. It's 15 minutes long, so it's I'm not going to show it to you tonight, but if you get a chance, go in and watch it. It's a phenomenal job. We want people that are seriously interested in the Clark House to go through this and see it, because they might say to themselves, man, I love this place, I really want to put in an RFP to the town, or it really doesn't meet my needs for one reason or another, so I'm not going to bother. So
So
it does give them
your
the ability.
application said that, said go and view the video
Yes,
first, it said.
absolutely. So we're strongly encouraging everybody to read that and to watch the
Yeah.
video.
That's a bad thing.
And so now the last part of
Okay,
this is to go into the
okay,
request for proposal, which is right above the video.
I didn't do that.
I read the RFP.
Yeah.
And the request for proposal, the first few pages, if you can just go down, just the, kind of like the appendix for the entire site. But it talks about the background of the fact that the town purchased the property, when we did it. The fact that we now have 3 buildings on the property at 1960 Clark Road. We have the Clark House, we have the Cart House, and we have the barn. And all 3 are eligible for some form of use. The thing that we're locking in, and this talks a little bit about each of the buildings and what the amenities for the buildings are, and some of the shortcomings of the buildings at this point in time. The one thing we're saying, though, is that if you're intent on trying to get one of the accessory buildings like the Cart House, we're not going to just give the Cart House out until after the Clark House has been leased. Until we know what the primary structure is going to be used for, we're not going to let the accessory structures go into play. So something's going to happen. You might be interested in the Clark House or the Cart House, you might be interested in the barn, but you're going to have to be in a waiting line now until that Clark House has actually been addressed.
Jim, is there anything about the parking lots in this as well?
It talks about the park, that's how I got the information. We can go back up a little bit, I'm sorry. All right, that just talks about where we are in location. You go down a little bit, where it says subject site, it starts talking about the property, then it starts talking about each of the buildings. It talks about the some of the amenities in the building, some of the shortcomings. It also talks about the fact that there's 180 parking spaces available. It talks about the fact that there is the tent area, if somebody's interested in doing something with the tent area. It really focuses a lot on the fact that the town board is going to be seriously interested in projects that are only compatible with the neighborhood. I don't think they want to see the Rolling Stones rolling in and having concerts out there with the tent. But they are interested in things that will be complementary to and in scale with the neighborhood in general. It talks a little bit about we did the phase 2 report for the buildings and the property. It lets you go in and look at those as well. It talks about the zoning requirements for the R120 zone in which the property is located. Prior to that, it talked a little bit about the fact that it's not in a floodplain. It's in a floodplain, but it's in a 500-year floodplain, which everything here is. But it's not in need of requiring flood insurance, anything of that nature, and we give them the references as to why that's the case. Down here, it talks about the fact that it is a designated historic site. And that's the criteria that you have to comply with in order to have have any improvements to the exterior of the building. It talks a little bit about the fact that the town of Penfield, because we're concerned about the property and the buildings themselves, we will take on the responsibility of any major capital improvements. If a new roof has to go on, we know there's work that has to be done on the exterior of the building. We know that the chimney needs to be repointed. Those major issues we're going to take care of. We're also going to take care of the plowing of the parking lots, because we're all going to want to utilize that parking area in addition to whoever takes over those buildings. They have to be open to the public on a regular basis. We cannot have somebody assuring us that they're going to do that and then not have them do it. You guys have to go out there and tramp around in the snow in your car. So we are going to be responsible for a lot of the major maintenance on these buildings. It talks a little bit about the submission requirements and the deadline. The deadline is Friday afternoon, the 10th of May. Probably after the 10th of May, this will come off the website, so we're not going to get any more unless somebody decides to expand it. But I suspect we're going to, by May 10th, we'll know who's interested and who isn't. And then it gives you the idea of what you're required to provide the town. It's kind of standard operating procedure. Keep going. Talks about the qualifications. They got to demonstrate that they're financially sound. They've got a track record. They're not fly-by-night operators. They're going to be somebody who the community will be proud to have in their town. They've had a good reputation. There are certain certificates that they have to provide us in terms of, non-collusion activity, no bribery issues, that type of thing. Interestingly enough, a town employee, the 5 of us, we could not bid on this. We could not go in for an RFP. That's a conflict of interest, so we're out. And you have to demonstrate that you're not somehow tied to somebody that's working for the town. It's kind of neat. The town board does have the right to reject any and all bid proposals. If 50 of them come in and all 50 of them are really just kind of garbagey and trashy, they're gonna say, no, we're not gonna do that at this point in time. We'll start working on the properties and get them cleaned up, but we're not gonna just hand it off just because somebody
Good.
is out there. Again, it talks about the site tours. The town staff will be responsible for conducting site tours. One of our guys, Jim Kreitman, who probably knows this place inside and out mechanically and electronically, he will probably be with us to answer any questions that somebody might have as it relates to their needs. After that period of time expires, the town board will then take all of the RFPs and start evaluating them to determine what's appropriate, what isn't. And then hopefully by mid to late June, the town board will come to a consensus as to what it thinks is appropriate, if anything, for the site. And they will make that decision. There's going to be a situation here, because there's so much work that needs to be done on each of the 3 buildings. There's no set price that you have to, you have to work within. They're going to negotiate every price to determine what the applicant or the respondent's going to be able to do to maintain the property, reasonably maintain it, make it in good shape. That might depend upon, them having to spend a lot more than they thought they might initially. It might be a case where they may have to have more years on their lease than they initially thought they would. Because if you got to put a lot of money into it, you got to get a return out of it. It's going to take a while to do that. So you might have a situation where somebody signs a 10-year lease because it's going to take them 10 years to make a profit off of it with what they have to do to maintain the property as well. Again, some of the things they're sensitive to, if we can stay there, the overall vision and concept is the strength of the concept plan based on aesthetic appeal, sensitivity to the historical character and scale of the area, incorporation of environmentally sustainable design features, extent to which the proposal incorporates adjoining businesses, because you could have another business that may or may not conflict with that in a card house or even the barn. And the perceived ability of the project to minimize adverse impacts to adjoining residential properties. It's a big issue for the town board. They do not want to get calls on Monday mornings because somebody had a wedding event or something in the barn and it was so loud that everybody on the streets awake dancing to the music at 2 o'clock in the morning. So those are all things that they're looking at right now. Their ability to implement the program and their financing structures to ensure that they're not going to be a burden to the community.
Weddings are good.
So going down, that's pretty much the standard
Hasn't been a problem.
portions of it. There are several,
For me.
there's contract negotiations could go on for an extended period of time depending on who they're dealing with and if there's a corporation behind them that has to go to Los Angeles or someplace to look at all the documentation to make sure they're happy with it. So it will not be a short process by any means. And they have to hold the town harmless in the event that something happens, that they caused a problem out there and it wasn't our fault. They have to deal with that issue. There are exhibits that we provided. We had survey map. Survey map. There's a location map just to show where we are in relation to the community. Kreitman did the facility survey identifying what was in each of the buildings. The history of the Clark House, which is here nor there, but it's kind of interesting to have it. Respondents' information and the certification, the bribery affidavit, vendor responsibility questionnaire to ensure that they're up and up and they're paying all their taxes and everything else, and then the non-inclusion affidavit saying there's 3 or 4 of them are going to get together and tell you one thing and do another. So I think we kind of covered it. We could keep going down. That was Jim Kreitman's survey of the utilities and facilities of the site. What needs to be done, what's functional. Keep going.
Yeah, you click on it.
Look at it for the cart barn, the storage barn. And we didn't cut any corners too. I mean, if you go back and, you look at the, we tell you that the barn is in poor condition. I mean, you're gonna walk through it and see it, but we're not gonna sugarcoat it. It's in poor condition and it needs help.
Okay.
There's an active link. That's a
keep going.
PDF you can download.
This is our exhibit showing where it is in relationship to the other communities. And I'm gonna give Doug a pat on the back and he's created this map.
Okay, thanks.
Which shows Shows the site as it relates to the rest of the community. Here's a survey of the areas in question. It's kind of interesting, in the 1960s on both sides of the road, but it was done that way. And you can't do that anymore, by the way. The county won't allow that to happen, but that was done a long time ago. It's all gonna be on the same side of the street now. That's what it looked like back in the day. And then the history of the Clark House, short history. It's kind of interesting. This is the Developer's Information Certification Statement. Tell us who they are, and they're on the up and up. Bribery affidavit to ensure that we're not dealing with a bunch of crazy people. This is the vendor responsibility questionnaire. It just talks about who they are, you know, it talks about their finances and the fact that they're in good standing with the state of New York, County of Monroe, and ultimately the town of Penfield. And that goes on for a while. You go.
A lot of work involved.
I'll say, holy.
You go. By the time you fill this form out, we know pretty much everything about you.
Very.
I didn't.
Keep going. And then the last document is non-collusion affidavit. This is the one that tells you that the town of Penfield employees cannot be directly or indirectly interested in the response. And that's it.
Jim, were all 180 parking spots made available?
It says
Well,
it's
that's what we're gonna have to
shared
talk
agreement.
about, because at some point in time, we may need to have more parking if we're gonna have events such as, you know, biking
Yeah, I
events.
Oh, for sure.
It was, yeah.
The other part of it too is gonna be an interesting proportion is that what kind of potential conflicts the Clark House users have with other users on the site. There's gonna have to be a point where they can't dominate, as I said, going back to my comment
That's the
earlier,
first
you can't
point of
have-
conflict is parking.
Right, you can't have any one use dominating the rest of them, or, you know, making it difficult for them to operate as well, so we gotta be careful about that. So that should be an interesting several next months coming up here as to what comes in. I had 4 people that had called me months before we had this moving, and they asked that I would notify them of the fact that it's in play, and I did. I think Mindy's one of them. So I sent those off to the 4 people that I promised I would, and they've got them, so. we'll see what
So it's not in the RFP that parking would have to be shared?
It's gonna be a
with the
negotiated
public.
issue. If
That's
there's
gotta be
a section that
negotiated.
talks about negotiation, there's gonna be a lot of negotiation.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of constraints to it.
Because that's the only parking spot we got.
It is, and you know, and again, you
Well,
made the point earlier.
there's a little bit by the maintenance shed, but it's
Right.
difficult to get in and out.
But you made the point earlier, and it's correct in the fact that we're gonna have to watch this and see what goes on. Town of Penfield may have to install a little more parking, maybe off the back end of the existing parking facilities to accommodate other uses.
Dude, it's going on my head every time. You, wide swing.
Ooh, I'm not even counting. Yeah.
Good thing there's a wall between us.
So that's kind of where we are right now. We'll keep you posted as we're going through for the rest of the program, and then as we start to fade away from each other, we'll still keep you posted through email as to where we are with this thing, so you have a good feel for it.
And Zach, proposed changes go to you or to Susan?
For what?
2 more formats.
To change, additional words.
Why not both of them?
Yeah, copy me on it. So I'll keep it updated
You
and,
up for this, Susan?
Sure.
yeah, copy me on the messages
When I
to
come
Susan.
to the next
Zach can
meeting,
help
you'll all know
Susan.
why.
Copy you, in other words, it
Susan
goes to
helps Zach.
Susan, copy to you.
Yeah, no, actually, please do include me on the emails, that way I can keep track of things as they're going on, and I can add it to the Google Drive for the committee to see and everything, so, yeah, by all means.
Thank you all very much.
Can I bring up one thing before we adjourn?
Yep.
There's something that's been sort of on my mind from the beginning, and maybe way off base, but if I don't raise it now, it's gonna be probably too late already. But something's been nagging at me right all the time, and we haven't talked about it a bit, and it may not be, probably isn't practical and all, but let me get it out there.
Okay.
Is there any possibility we could consider cutting off Clark Road, I think it is, from the Clark House west to Huntington, and just closing that road down and thereby joining the north and south portion. Is that ridiculous?
There's a lot of traffic goes up and down there.
I know.
And especially the people living on Huntington, they've got to get access to the school, they got to get access to even the community center, they have to go all the way around.
Just emergency services alone.
It would
that
be
wouldn't
difficult, it would be difficult
Yeah.
to do that. I know that at one time, Dolomite even talked about the possibility of eliminating that part of Scribner Road and incorporating it if they were gonna move further onto the area with the
Yeah.
park house, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a thought, it obviously is a thought, but I don't know how realistic it is at this point in time.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you said that, but I don't know, I just wanted to say it. Does anybody think it's even worth talking about anymore?
Well, someone during the open session recommended a road.
Right. To come right.
Yeah.
Into the property?
Right through the back nine across to
Yeah.
Panorama Trail.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody was suggesting, like,
Yeah.
a new.
Taking the
hun-
kink out of Whalen
Somebody
Road
was
there.
suggesting a new Huntington Meadow is what they were proposing. Another way to get to Panorama Trail without going through Huntington Meadow.
Mm-hmm, yes.
And why not go through something
Right,
else?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
Well,
big-
taking Whalen right through the.
You're going through somebody's
Right
property.
Yeah,
across.
that was-
Right.
A little different of a topic than closing Clark Road.
Are you concerned for safety to get people across?
I just think it'd be nice, it would just join the
Join the two together.
property
Complete the
together,
whole thing.
and especially when you consider the lake later, it would just make for a much enhanced property, but I realize there are huge practical difficulties. So I just wanted to throw it out and see if, yeah,
Good point.
it would really be
It's a
beautiful.
thought, I'm glad you brought it up. I don't know how realistic it could be at this point in time anyways, maybe as time goes on, but.
Yeah,
Take over the
all right,
board.
I feel better, I wasn't bringing it out.
It's
tonight.
really-
That being said though, we are gonna have to look at some way of safely crossing from Huntington Meadow into that property somehow.
Yes, oh yeah, yeah.
We're gonna have to look at that as an option.
You can be a crosswalk when you
Steve,
retire.
Well, there will have to be a crosswalk, and there'll have to probably be piano bars, and they'll probably have to have the solar panels to, run the walk signs.
Make this be-
But there's gonna have to be more than there is now, that's for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
I was just gonna say that
Exactly.
it's
Especially
really,
with
really hard to get a
physically
road
sending
closed.
people up there on a sidewalk off of Huntington Meadow.
Right, right.
It's really hard to get a road closed, because when Home Depot was being proposed to be built, the residents on Huntington Meadow wanted that intersection shut off down to Panorama Trail.
That's
They
right.
wanted a cul-de-sac, they wanted it
Yeah.
stopped there to prevent the drive-through traffic that would come from Home Depot,
Sure.
et cetera. It didn't get
I remember
close.
that.
And the biggest issue was fire
Yeah,
access,
emergency
fire and
response,
emergency access.
Yeah.
But there's a
Just-
lot of cars use that road.
And
Not as many as used to. It was really high, it was like 4,000, 4,500 a day before we put the speed humps in, and it
Yeah.
dropped it by 20%.
Yeah, but I mean, Panorama Trail has a lot of
Oh,
cars.
yeah, no, absolutely. It's a major, it's a
that's a
major
tough
thing.
intersection, and when traffic's high, getting out of Huntington Meadow
Oh, yeah.
onto,
I do it a lot. I live in that neighborhood.
it's difficult
It's
when-
tough.
during commute
It's
time.
not a great situation either, because you're not coming in at an 90-degree angle, you're kind of coming in at an angle.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it easy to see things coming and going as best as they could.
There haven't been many accidents though, fortunately.
Because everybody knows it could be dangerous if you don't watch yourself. But- Well, again, thank you all very much. We appreciate you coming, as you always have. And hopefully you guys wrap your stuff up and we'll get together again in 2 weeks.
Poor Susan.
Hopefully we'll be-